But Israelis or Jews masquerading as Arabs and or Muslims is not the only capability the Mossad has to conduct terrorism or infiltrate and handle the Al-Qaeda nexus. Considering what's conclusive 8.5 years later with Israel's foreknowledge and highly likely role in 9/11, while the narrative masterminds of the 1993 and 2001 attacks on the Twin Towers is the uncle-nephew relationship between KSM and Ramzi Youssef, there seems to be yet again another Israeli intelligence leak to the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, but through Youssef with his original and mysterious companion and possible commandant, Ahmed Ajaj, who had both landed at JFK Airport on September 2, 1992. As you'll recall, Youssef was still let into the country using an Iraqi passport, while Ajaj was detained by airport security for trying to enter on a photo-substituted Swedish passport while claiming to be a member of the Swedish press, carrying bomb-making manuals, videos and other materials on weapons, explosives assembly, anti-American and anti-Israeli materials, instructions on document forgery, and 2 devices made to alter passports issued from Saudi Arabia. One of the manuals was entitled Al-Qaeda, the Base, written in 1982, years before the supposed group was founded. However, prior to all of this, Ajaj was arrested in 1988 as a petty crook, counterfeiting US dollars on a base in East Jerusalem. He was sentenced to 2.5 years in federal prison, but only served 1 year.
Yeah, the American government's replaced the red menace with the green peril, green being the color of Islam. It seems like we always need a boogeyman, and the boogeyman of the week is now militant Islam.
Robert L. Friedman of the Village Voice, who had sources within Israeli intelligence, reported that while Ajaj was in prison, he was recruited by the Mossad. When he had gotten out, he had seemingly undergone a radical transformation. Suddenly he became a devout Muslim and an outspoken hardline nationalist, yet prior, Ajaj was never known to be involved in Intifada activities or being pro-Hamas or PLO. Friedman also stated, Youssef associate Ajaj appeared to have been recruited as a Mossad asset and deployed as an infiltrator in Islamic fundamentalist circles. Then Ajaj was arrested for smuggling weapons into the West Bank, supposedly for Al-Fatah, a subdivision of the PLO. Friedman's sources in Israeli intelligence say the arrest of Ajaj's subsequent deportation were staged by the Mossad to establish his credentials as an Intifada activist. Mossad allegedly tasked Ajaj to infiltrate radical Palestinian groups operating outside Israel and to report back to Tel Aviv. Israeli intelligence sources say that it is not unusual for Mossad to recruit from the ranks of common criminals. After Ajaj's deportation from Israel, or being expelled from the West Bank on May 17, 1991, and dumped on the Israeli-Jordanian border, where according to his brother Mustafa, quoted in the Associated Press May 7, 1993, that he was asked not to return for 5 years, meanwhile being harassed by Jordanian police, allegedly because of his religion, which doesn't really pan out too well because apparently he didn't decide to become a fundamentalist until many years later, while in prison after the Trade Center bombing.
The terrorist convicted in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing is now suing the United States.
He says his religious rights are being violated in prison because his meals aren't catered to his Islamic beliefs.
But coming back to the early 90s, Ajaj eventually winds up in Houston, Texas in late 1991, having been granted political asylum, living with some of his relatives there, working as a Domino's pizza delivery driver. Ajaj then shows up the following year in Pakistan, where he turned up in the company of Ramzi Youssef and allegedly anti-Soviet Mujahideen rebels in Afghanistan. But still, this all in itself could point further toward Ajaj and likely even Ramzi Youssef working for the Mossad. For according to the Covert Action Information Bulletin, September 1987, the funding and supply lines for the Mujahideen was not only the second largest covert operation in the CIA's history, but it was also, according to former Mossad operative Viktor Ostrowski, writing in The Other Side of Deception, under the direct supervision of the Mossad. But before we continue further exploring the Youssef KSM family and links, let's take further examinations of Ahmad Salem and his true role in 1993.
Couldn't believe the FBI would basically tell him to build the bomb, give him real detonators, and then tell him let it go forward.
So was Alex Jones right? Does the 1993 World Trade Center bombing look like an inside job so far, as a shadow government or false flag conspiracy perpetrated by the FBI?